kind of comes back to me of like, it's not just the movie, right? Making the movie is the experience and the process and the human beings who put their fingerprint on every little section of the movie.
Blayne, what AI tools have you started using?
Oh, zero. I've never touched one. I honestly, I keep getting ads on my social media, and I keep like Xing. I wouldn't even know what I would use them for. That's how ignorant I am of it. And you know, I try to maintain that ignorance as much as I can. I know that there are some writing tools and things that are being used, and I know that it's scary, and I don't like it. I don't know. What tools do you use, out of curiosity?
Oh, well, ChatGPT, I have tried, and then a few illustration programs, which I'm just skimming the surface. I claim no proficiency.
And do you challenge, like, ChatGPT, do you put in an idea and just see what comes out, or what it creates? And
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I have tried from asking it questions on a price for something and basing it on the fact that it's not since I think 2020 or 2021 since it's been updated.
Yeah.
But you can ask any type of question and you get a very interesting answer back. And there's always disclaimers usually if it's a certain, this is an AI and no generalities are made or different things. But you can put in an idea. I did try a few story ideas and said, please write this story. Here are going to be some of the parameters to the story.
Yeah.
Here's the character. I was surprised at what was spit back, and I mean, it was instantaneous.
Yeah.
So that part is scary. I will say that the story that was spit back missed the human element. It didn't have little quirks and idiosyncrasies for the character. It was perfectly written, but it wasn't... let's say, didn't have a quote-unquote voice of an author.
Right. Okay, so what I think about it is I think that it will absolutely get to a place where it could be used to replace writers. I think that's absolutely true. I think it's because screenwriting, right now especially, is structure-based. There is a paint-by-numbers scenario that 80% of films adhere to, and if you can have that structure, and you can have the hero's journey and the familiar themes that we've been using basically since Socrates or whatever, then there will be a way for AI to figure out enough human foibles in order to make it work. That terrifies me. I don't want that, and I feel like that's one of the reasons why the Writers Guild is striking right now. I think that is an incredibly good reason to strike, and I feel like there's a lot of legitimate rules that can be put into place to, ebb that growth, because I don't think we need it. I think it should be reserved for things to play with on the internet of like, what if I ask it these questions? Let's see what it comes back with. But that's just my opinion. I feel like tricking us into believing that artificial intelligence is human is really just about finding the right balance of weirdness and neuroses, because people are weird, but it won't have the dramatic, important human experience that, I feel like drama demands. But it may be able to fool us into thinking that that's what it is.
But that's, you talk about people being weird, so that weirdness in a character that's in a TV writer's room, and you have writers fleshing out, why would this person do this? Let's have this happen. Is AI really, do you think, at a stage where it could become that weird? Or is that only something that comes from being human?
I mean, I'd like to say that it's just something that comes from being human. I'd like to say that. I'd like to believe that. What I worry about is, look, I think it was last week that a bunch of the head people, scientists about AI, wrote this letter saying that it's a major threat to humanity. And if they feel that, right, if they're so concerned with AI being a threat to, an existential threat to humanity, how much of a shorter trip is it to them being able to write a good sitcom? I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of it being able to put people out of work. I'd like to believe that no computer could ever do the work that I and my colleagues do. But that being said, I think that's one of the reasons that it's so dangerous is how much of what we write affects people, how much of what we write changes what people think or convinces them to, you know, do this or not do this. Or, you know, I always think about when I was a kid, I grew up in the South, you know, and I knew not to be racist because of different strokes. I was probably 6, you know, when I'm watching the show, and there was a bad kid, and he was the racist kid, and I'm like, okay, that's a bad guy. I'm not going to be the bad guy, despite, you know, whatever hate I might have been surrounded by, you know, extended family or school or whatever. That taught me something, and I don't like the idea of an AI-generated thing deciding what lessons humanity should be learning. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, I don't like that. So I hope we can put a pin in it and just like take the creating of drama out of Hal's hands, so we can just do it ourselves, you know?
Have you thought about venturing into it to see the capabilities and maybe realizing that some of the fear is unfounded, or maybe you would see that actually it's more terrifying than you realize?
You know what? I'm just not that into it. I'm not that interested in it, to be honest with you. Like, I'm concerned about it. But like I said, this thing of all the scientists signing that letter, that's concerning for me. Like, I don't want to play with it. I don't want it to know where, you know, I don't know what AI and GPS and cookies and, you know, all these things combined. I don't need artificial intelligence knowing where I live and what my social security number is. But I don't know. It's mostly just that I don't understand it and I fear it. So I'll wait until, you know, somebody more savvy than I am says, hey, you know what this is great for? This. And as long as it's not getting away without having to do my homework, I'll probably get on board at that point.
Do you edit your own films?
No, I don't. But I'm always right there. I tend to sit like annoyingly close to my editor and then second guess at every single step. No, I very much enjoy the editing process and working with great editors who are intuitive and talented. And I've been lucky that every editor I've worked with has made me better at what I do. So.
Okay, you said intuitive. So what if there was an AI program that was almost as intuitive as a live body, who had years of experience?
And I believe that I mean, if that's not here, then it's soon to be here, you know, that makes sense. Again, I mean, look, you want to break it down to the very basics of who I am, right? You know, I'm a union guy, I'm a worker, you know, we're striking right now for the Writers Guild. The last thing I'm interested in doing is taking work away from one of my crew members, who I would always say, you know, the editor is one of the key components of making a great film. So I don't love it, you know, but I also know that we're cutting corners now in, you know, technology that we couldn't do before. We were talking about the digital cameras. You know, we had a zoom lens on this film, which is the first time that I not had a giant box of prime lenses. You know, this one, he would just zoom the lens. It was like, all right. And so we got that for a lot less than it would take to get the primo lenses, right? Okay, so what's the difference between me cutting that corner and me cutting the corner with, maybe I only bring on an editor at the end of the process instead of the beginning? I don't know. It just makes me uneasy. I like having a person that I can bounce off of and we can talk. And at the end of the day, it kind of comes back to me of like, it's not just the movie, right? Making the movie is the experience and the process. and the human beings who put their fingerprint on every little section of the movie. And so when this film is finished, it won't just be a Blayne Weaver picture. It'll be, you know, Blayne and Dave and Jeremy and, you know, Mike and all these guys who put this movie together and made it. It's ours, right? Because we each weighed in and fought our fights and compromised when it was time to compromise, but we made this thing together, and it just doesn't sound fun to me.